Hey, I didn't see you there. My name's Shammi, and welcome to the first ever episode of RottenTomatoes, where I discuss the worst of the worst rated by IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and see where these films went so wrong. Today I thought we'd start this pilot off strong, with the movie that had a literal 0 on Rotten Tomatoes and a whopping 7 award nominations, 6 from the 2019 Razzie Awards and 1 2018 Golden Schmo for the worst movie of its time. Today, we talk about 2018's version of Gotti, directed by Kevin Conroy, is a movie you can watch. Yep, I can say that. If you love a movie that makes you go, why the hell am I watching this for almost 2 hours, then do I have the movie for you. Based on the real-life story of John Gotti. John Gotti is a man who in his teens worked for the Gambino crime family, and eventually became the boss of the crime family. In this movie, he's being played wonderfully by John Travolta. Taking place in multiple times. It doesn't really specify. Sometimes they'll give a date, and sometimes they don't. So we get to see the life of John Gotti, from basically when he was one of the highest ranked people in the Gambino family to the head honcho of it. We get to see the struggles, like watching his son die, and that's the only moment I remember. The rest is such an amalgamation of clips. It doesn't feel like a concise story, but a conglomeration of clips that doesn't fit well with each other. But even that scene of his son dying was so predictable and, uninteresting and boring that I honestly just didn't care. And even if it wasn't boring, it still doesn't matter. Because maybe after 20 minutes tops, they forget all about it. He just doesn't even grow from it. He goes to his wife and says, let's stop crying about him. And that's it. And if someone occasionally talks about how his son's dead, he does the same Will Smith stuff and goes, keep my son's name out your mouth, feel, and everything from him. And boy, does this movie like to go back and forth from flashbacking into the future, present. It doesn't say, as I said before. It's no context. And that's the biggest problem with this movie, is it's so all over the place, you can't connect anything. Here, let me play you a full scene from the movie with the context given, from start to end. Yep, that was the entire scene. That's all the context really given. They don't say who did it. It just goes boom. Here's another one. We see somewhat young John Gotti talking to what we can only assume are 2 higher-ups in the Gambino family. He talks to him for a bit, cuts to a fight at a cafe. Gotti comes in and then just shoots the guy. Because why not? That's it. They don't elaborate on why. They just does it, and that's all. He calls it a day. And, oh God, don't get me started on the fight choreography. I swear these fights look so bad. All right, here's a scene where Gotti's kid fights a couple of guys at a bar. Tell me, do you know what the actual hell is going on? I don't. I wish I did. But the lighting is so terrible, and the camera forgets how to do the filming part of a film. It just looks like a bunch of motion. The story goes all over the place, trying to tackle too much. All right, and here's another thing. For 5 out of the 25 songs, they decided this olden crime mafia movie about John Gotti. You know what would be good for that? Yeah, I got it. Pitbull. Why, of course, Pitbull. Makes complete sense, considering it takes place in the what? 1980s? Yeah. Also, most movies, any form of a story, whether it's a show or a book, at least have 1 or 2 types of different conflicts. Example like person views self, where a person has to deal with their own griefs or problems or something like that, or a person views society. You get the idea. But this movie tries to have like 7 different types of conflicts, and it can't decide if it's a family movie or a crime mafia movie, trying to go through the life of both Gotti and his son, and who's actually the main character. It's trying to show too much and not elaborating and staying on one certain point. There's a full wedding scene with John Gotti's kid and a girl that we see once in the movie beforehand. And then they try to get you attached to hundreds of people. That's impossible to do with a little bit less than 2 hours. It's like Marvel's Eternals, if you remember watching that. I couldn't remember anyone's name other than Gotti. His son's name is Gotti Jr., and I had to look it up for this video to remember it. And they try to make Gotti out as a good guy. I understand that from Gotti's family view, and he probably respected by many people at the time, and they use references from Gotti's kid's book about him and whatnot. But he's also the head of the biggest crime family possibly ever. So it's hard to feel remorseful for him at times. And it's not like a movie about John Gotti is impossible. Hell, there's a movie by the same name from 1996 with a 60 on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb. It even won an Emmy. Like, here's a scene where Gotti has to let go of one of his men, Angelo. Now, it should feel impactful, but it doesn't. Why? Because there's really no consequences on anything in this movie, so nothing feels like it matters. There's no weight to anything. You have no connection to them. A movie should flow and feel like there's something at stake. And this movie doesn't have that. It tries to go for too much at once and makes it feel like a bunch of randomness. Now, I'd love to talk about my own opinions, but I think it's a good idea to see what other people think. And in this segment, we like to call Ranted Reviews. This first one is from Mike Capola. It's the giggly of gangster movies. Something astoundingly incoherent that strikes a fatal balance between boredom and unintentional humor that's virtually impossible to recommend, giving it a 1 out of 5. Now, listen, I tried so hard to like this movie, but it's so painfully boring and confusing that it just makes me sad when I watched it. Another review from Louisa Moore says, an incoherent jumble, not unlike that of puzzle pieces thrown together in a bag, shaken up, and heaved on the side of an astounding display of haphazard incompetence, giving it a 0.5 out of 5, which I think is one of the best analogies I've ever heard for a film, and it fits so well for this movie. As I said beforehand, everything about this movie has no coherency, and it just feels like a mishmash of random clips that the producers went, sure, I think this works. And now our last review comes in from Frank Sweetek, saying that Travolta is obviously having a grand time, playing the stereotypical Goomba, and it's hard to take your eyes off him. A pity then that the movie as a whole is a shapeless mess, with another 0.5 out of 5. Well, yes, it's hard to take your eyes off of this movie with him in it. It's more similar to watching a car crash than enjoying a movie, mostly. But I guess if you enjoy vehicular homicide, then I have a movie for you. So what have we learned today? That 2018 Gotti is a terrible movie because some people don't know what the term coherent means and what timepieces should be. Now, Gotti says at the end of this movie,
listen to me, and listen to me good. You're never gonna see another guy like me if you live to be 5,000.
Let's hope that can be said for a movie like this.